Okay.
Soon, a dragon is coming.
Pardon me. Turn off the echo. Okay, good evening. Okay, I'll be a bit late. Some technical issues. I went into another broadcast just to check things, and that seemed to be working. Someone else's broadcast. I'll come back into this. And okay, so I've still got my amazing game set to show you. I was really keen to show you this set of games, which are taken from the great creative achievements of players playing in the current Russian Super Finals Championship. So not games exactly from that championship, but in the past. So let's have a look at some of these interesting games that I want to show you. Just on Twitch, is the board okay? The board should be okay. I did a quick test earlier, so the board and audio should be okay there, yeah? I hope it's okay. Just if it's not, please say now if the board's not okay. Should be okay. So, right. So this is Dmitry Andreikin against Sergei Karjakin. So C4, this was from the World Blitz Championship, Moscow 2010. So both these players are playing in the current Russian Super Finals. But this is a really sweet past encounter of these two amazing players that I thought I'd kick off this evening checking out these games. So we did start a bit late, so I'm going to probably end around 10:30 to make it try and make it an hour. Sorry about the technical issues, but at least now I know how to resolve them, the particular ones tonight. Anyway, so the English opening from Dmitry Andreikin. So he was 2-6-8-3 at the time of this particular game. Remember, this is just a blitz game, but it's a very interesting one. E5 from Karjakin. We see knight c3, knight c6, and white plays knight f3. So both knights developed, and Sergei now plays g6. So Karjakin playing black plays g6, and here is where it gets interesting immediately. White plays d4, and you might think, well, okay, is the idea just to take on d4 and then maybe try and take with the queen? Well, e takes d4, so you might expect the move knight takes d4 here, but actually we see a very tricky move, knight d5. I'll say tricky for blitz because white is emphasizing quite quickly these weakened dark squares. There's a dangerous threat of bishop g5, so black needs to tread quite carefully already here. This temporary pawn sacrifice is quite interesting. Now this looks like an entirely illogical move, what black plays here. Bishop g7, so he's clinging on to the pawn. So what is this? Some strange sort of gambit? Well, okay, we see now bishop g5, and this is already a little bit tricky what black is actually doing here. In the game we see knight ge7, and it looks as though this tempts white to play knight f6 check. That looks quite tempting. This might not be completely in white's favour. Maybe black can just play king f8 and it's not too bad. With h6 to follow, this might be tricky. There might even be something better, but okay, knight ge7, but white doesn't play knight f6 check. In this blitz game, Andreikin played knight takes d4, and so the shock of this move is that surely black's got that piece. He's got his bishop and knight here. Okay, he can't take with his knight because then it would be embarrassing, wouldn't it? Because of bishop takes e7, winning the queen. So that's clear enough that it can't be taken with the knight. And you might think, well, can't black take this with the bishop? Okay, so black does take with the bishop here. And can you guess what white played in this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. So white to play, what does white play in this position? Any ideas? Or do you think he's just plundered a piece? I'm going to have to show you. I think I'll give you a few more seconds. What would you play as white? Anyone? Okay, I'm going to show you. White now plays the stunning queen takes d4. And it's a horrible forcing sequence here. If knight takes d4, we would have knight f6 check, king f8, and bishop h6 is mate. So queen takes d4 is a shocking move. Can black do anything to get out of trouble here? Well, Karjakin tried castling. This is going into a very unfortunate check here. After king h8, there's another brilliant little combination played now. What would you play here with white? If I give you 20 seconds here, white to play and win here. So black's just played king h8. If I give you 20 seconds here, what would you play in this position? Anyone? What would you play here? Any ideas? Alright, I'm going to show you. Knight g4 check, again offering the queen. Knight g4 check. So now if king g8, then we just have knight h6, mate. So the queen should be taken here, surely. So knight takes d4. We have bishop f6 check. And after king g8, we still play this knight h6 and it's mate. So it was a very, very brief blitz game, this one. In fact, in the game, after knight g4 check, black just played king g8, I think, actually, and just allowed knight h6 checkmate. So on move 11, it was just a blitz game. So let's have a quick look at this blitz game again. So a bit of a shocker, a bit of a shocking gambit from the English opening. You wouldn't think the English opening is capable of such a lethal gambit so early. So d4 here, taking now knight d5. So there's a bit of a trap, actually. This is a bit of a trap game to play this kind of trap. I don't know what we can call it, an English opening trap. So it was unveiled in this blitz game. So bishop g7, bishop g5. I mean, you know, if black played f6, we'd have a comfortable game anyway. We'd just play bishop h4 and knight takes d4 next with a nice advantage. So knight ge7, as though, you know, knight f6 is being provoked. But then we get this stunning continuation, knight takes d4, you know, and it's a very, very nice position. You know, maybe knight b5 next on c7. So, you know, black was stunned now after bishop takes d4, queen takes d4. So we have that little tactic, you know, knight takes d4, knight f6 check, and then bishop h6. So castles, but it's pretty bad here after castles. So check, king h8, check from the queen, and this, you know, it's hopeless to play here. We just play bishop takes f6 check, and again we're mating like this. Doesn't make any difference. So in the game it was just like this. But the beautiful thing, even if the queen's lost, then we just play like this again. So it's a bit of a shocking game. I thought I'd kick off with this game. So let's have a look at another game. So these are very interesting, notable games that I wanted to show you tonight, based on the players playing in the current Russian Championship. Now here's another very notable game, which shows the enormous tactical abilities of Sergei Karjakin. when he's not on the receiving end. So here he's playing against Alexandra Kosteniuk. So this is from the Danaman match of Brazargo in 2003. I think he was only 13 years old at the time of this game, but still higher rated FIDE even at this point than Kosteniuk. He's 2547, Kosteniuk's 2456 in 2003. So Karjakin is one of the great, chess prodigies at the moment, the same age as Magnus Carlsen, and in the top 10, I believe, at the moment. So in this game, at around 2500 rating, let's see what happened. So e4, c5, Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, and we get into what's called the Sveshnikov Sicilian. So this early e5 here, now knight f6, this is Kalashnikov, I think, with d6. Knight f6 is more Sveshnikov. I think this is something else. Kalashnikov, I'm not entirely sure. It's related to Sveshnikov, but now it's quite different. Okay, with this early d6. So the knight 1 to c3, a6, and a quick b5 from black, threatening b4. Knight moves out of the way. Knight c, e7. Now white plays c4. Kosteniuk takes. We see e takes d5. B takes c4. Knight takes c4. So, okay, at the moment it looks as though white's done okay from the opening, and there's a very, maybe there's a serious threat on b6 now. This is parried with rook b8. Bishop e2, bishop e7. a4, both sides castle. Bishop b7. Knight b6, protecting d5. Knight d7. And I actually want to take you to the interesting tactical points of this game. So let's just breeze through a little bit these moves. A5, f5. So intuitively at the moment, it looks as though black's doing quite well. If she can, get the bishop, for example, on this diagonal, or something like this, this could be, quite good piece activity. f3, now taking on b6, bishop takes. Queen d7, b4. So white's got a 2-to-1 pawn majority. Fine. Bishop d8. Maybe black should have just seized the c-file here to try and come down the c-file. But bishop d8, bishop e3. Bishop f6. Rook b1. Queen f7. Bishop c4. Holding d5 for a moment. Rook fc8. Queen d3. So it looks as though a6 is being pressured here. So that's defended. Now we see rook fc1. And it looks as though in protecting the bishop, that actually with d5 protected, f5 is now attacked in this position. And maybe this is why queen h5 to defend f5. Bishop b3, and it looks as though maybe there's an idea of a tactic even to try and exploit this diagonal, but we're going to see fireworks now with this diagonal in mind. After bishop g5, not just yet, queen d2, an exchange of dark square bishops, and here black Kosteniuk plays queen f7, and here is where it gets incredibly interesting. This is the interesting point of the game actually coming up. Now white plays queen b6. So okay, he's attacking d6, and if he attacks d6, e5 is weak after. So surely Kosteniuk should take on d5, and she does. She does. Bishop takes d5. Can you guess what Sergei Karjakin played in this position? And I think this started shaping his perception as an amazingly strong tactical player. So what does white play in this position? It might not, from an engine point of view, actually be the strongest move in the position, but it did create a beautiful aesthetic effect, the game continuation here. So if I give you 20 seconds starting from now, what would you play as white? Anyone? Any ideas? Alright, yeah, there's a very, very tactical move. I think the engine move might have been just to take on c8 here, and then take on a6. But actually, we see Karjakian playing a very interesting move from a human perspective. Queen takes a6, so like queen sacrifice. And, you know, if this is taken, let's rule this out. Rook takes c8 check. The queen's actually on c8. Okay, so, and you might think, well, taking here, if taking here, we have rook takes. Now the queen's got 2 squares here. And this is a bit too much like the game, actually. Pardon me. Well, if queen f8, bishop takes d5, and, you know, we're winning like this. So that rules that out. And if queen e8, we can like take here, and we're still like a bishop up, so that rules that out. But what Kosteniuk did is actually to take on c1. And you might think, well, does this refute the whole concept? Well, Karjakin, he takes on c1. Okay, so now look, if we take the bishop, we lose the rook. So is this an improvement? Well, rook takes a6. We get this idea rook c8 check again. And there's a very important resource here for black, like we've seen almost working in the other variation. Not queen f8, because that loses immediately to check, and then we just take on f8. No, the nifty tactic which would seem to play here is actually this queen e8. You know, it gives the king f7. And if, you know, bishop takes d5, then we just play this, and actually black's winning here. You know, the exchange up. Well, not winning. I mean, maybe the 2 pawns might offer white still a very good position, actually. Coming to think about it, it is pretty dangerous. Unless black can blockade in time with her king, that might be possible. For example, actually, I should have really checked this position. If we get a blockade, then that's good news. No, that wasn't the idea, though. This whole thing wasn't the idea. What we're going to see now is after rook takes e8 check in this position, this is game continuation. So queen e8, rook takes e8 check was played, allowing king f7. And here there's a wonderful move. So you might think this was a blunder. You know, why not? Why not? You know, bishop. You know, because it goes into that line. So not bishop takes d5. So wonderfully clever rook takes e8, if you can find the follow-up. So it was after king f7. Can you spot a fantastic resource here for white if I gave you 20 seconds starting from now? As I say, I think this created this impression of Karjakin as a great tactical player. I mean, this was when he was 13. This is like 2003. Ah, a couple of you. Have you seen this game before? Hope a couple of you on Play Chess might have come up with something very interesting. Anyone on Twitch? Ah, yes, this pin. What is it that Nimzovich said about the power of the pin? I think he said something about the power of the pin's piece. The power of the pin's piece is an illusion. The power of the pin piece is imaginary. The power of this is imaginary. Let's imagine that bishop is imaginary and wasn't on the board. Then what squares would we have access to? If that bishop was imaginary because it's pinned to the king, what squares would we have access to then? I think some of you have guessed it. If the power of the pin makes the pin piece like useless, imaginary as well, then we see rook a8. It's an absolute stunner. Geometrically aesthetic move. you know, if bishop takes, then rook takes, and we exchange up. And the problem is, so that's pinned. So that's imagining. If rook takes, then we have bishop takes d5 check, and we're just going to be a bishop up. So this just won the game. After, you know, rook a8. I think this was it. I think there might have been another move. Bishop takes and rook takes, and then black resigned. So that's a shocker from the 13-year-old Karjakin. Okay, so that's another kind of notable game I think everyone should be aware of when looking at this player Karjakin in the current, you know, Russian Championship. These guys have played some amazing games in the past. So let's have a look at another game. Now, Peter Zvidler has played obviously tons and tons of brilliant games. I've found here a notable game to have a look at Peter Zvidler you might not have seen before. And it's probably, we're going to get some perception of it at some level. So let's have a go anyway. It's enormously complicated. I think I've been a bit daring with this game selection. So it was against Michael Adams in the year 2000, I think in the European Cup, EU Cup. So e4, and Adams plays e5, and we get the Roy Lopez. Okay, and now bishop c5 from Adams. c3, b5, okay, d6. So this is Archangelist system with only bishop c5. So a4, bishop g4. Okay, things seem quite stodgy at the moment. Fairly standard. b4 from Adams. a5. So fixing the a6 pawn. And maybe white's going to be interested in this c4 square at some point. Rook b8, queen e2. Adams takes on c3 and plays d5. So it looks as though should d5 almost equalise. Well, here is where things really start hotting up. The tactical move d4 is played, so it's attacking the bishop and it's also attacking a6. And remember, there's a loose knight on c6, so this taking on a6 is with tempo. But what can Adams do? He has to take on d4, surely. Well, he did play that. Queen takes a6, we're attacking the knight, and things really start getting sharp. D takes c3, not budging the knight but attacking this knight. Queen takes c6. C takes d2, leaving this bishop because we're attacking this bishop. Knight takes d2. Okay, we've got bishop attacked. Adams plays bishop d4, attacking the rook. And what does white play here? So white has to keep this momentum going. Perhaps you would argue of hopefully having some threats to keep black busy. So bishop d4, what would you play here? This is a very interesting, nifty move in this position. If I give you 10 seconds starting from now, sorry, not 10 seconds, 20 seconds, because it's a bit of a delay on transmission here. So 20 seconds starting from now. What would you play in this position if you had white? Anyone? So you want to try and keep your initiative going. Okay, it's not amazingly clever. It's just rook a4, so it's attacking the bishop. So Adams plays d takes e4, so he's protecting the bishop with his queen. Knight takes e4. And we start to see that there's a hint of some issues here. The hint is, okay, what is going on here? Does it look dangerous for h7? Adams didn't think so. He played knight takes e4, and he doesn't fear queen takes e4, which would seem to be simultaneously hitting h7 and d4. But black would have bishop g6 here, skewing the queen and bishop. So he didn't play that. Peter Zvidler played bishop takes e4. So what does this threaten? What is white actually threatening? Well, for the moment, Adams just thought, well, it's not threatening too much, and played actually the move Bishop E2. There's probably a lot of other. There might be a lot of other alternatives here. So Bishop E2. It looks as though White's forced into like moving the rook. By depriving D1, there's no way of putting pressure on D1. White would like to play that, but the rook's attacked. But here, this bishop is a bit of a tactical liability potentially, and we see actually there's actually two bishops which are tactically liable. We see a very strong move played. Bishop takes h7 check. Okay, so now if the king takes, which it didn't, I believe it's not that bishop which is issue, but actually this bishop. So what would White play in this position if you were White? What would you play here with White? Okay, I'm hoping you'll see it. Well, there's only one. It's a check. Okay, so check, and I think we're just going to take this bishop. So Adams didn't want to, get his king out there. He played king h8. Okay, and now things get very, very interesting again, because again, instead of moving the rook, White played now. He's not very obedient in this game. White plays Bishop C2. So you might think, well, what is this about? Why can't the rook be taken? This is a really, really complicated game. Now, if the rook's taken, then okay, what is the main kind of issue in this position? Would you say? It's probably similar to earlier, actually. I'm not taking here. This is Poxy. Queen E4. I think I should have really engine checked this game. It is threatening mate and the bishop again, and this might be quite dangerous to parry. Unless there's anything stronger that anyone can see. Can anyone see anything stronger? Because I'm just wondering actually. Queen E4, F5. Let's imagine F5. Yes, should have checked this game earlier. Okay. But for whatever reason, okay, Rook E8 was played. It cuts out. It just, again, asking this Rook to move. And it did actually move now. Rook E1. Rook E6. And now it looks, it gets absolutely crazy, this game. From this crazy sequence. So at the moment, White's a pawn up, but if he moves his queen, then F2 is starting to look a little bit vulnerable. And where actually does his queen go? It looks as though actually the queen hasn't got any squares. Hasn't got any squares. Nope. Queen's actually trapped. Would you agree? So this looks a bit bad that the queen's trapped. Indeed. So we see queen takes e6 from Peter Vidler. So queen sack, rook takes e2. Okay. This bishop's a bit loose, so why not protect it? But now White has got this dangerous pawn. He plays a6. Adams plays queen d7 here. Okay, and there might be an idea, potentially of rook b1 to deflect, but actually just a7 drives the rook back into the corner. And now we get a stunning move. which is really okay. It's a stunner. What would you play here if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? So white to play. Is black going to just munch your a7 pawn? What do you want to do about this? What would you play here with white? So 20 seconds starting from now. Okay, now someone on Twitch has mentioned something here, but I hope you've got a continuation in mind. Okay, I'm going to show you now. So Piku Frenzy. Okay, rook takes e5. What a strange move. Looking move. Okay, what is going on here? Well, okay, let's have a look. If this is ignored, then there's big trouble, isn't there? If rook takes, I think there's big trouble for black because of check, for example, and we can carry on the checks. And they look quite dangerous, these checks. In fact, it looks as though the queen's going to be lost. For example, it looks really, really dangerous. Rook takes e5, just in that example. So what does black actually do? Okay, now Adams actually played g6, believe it or not. But if he plays bishop takes e5, yes, we have rook h4 check, king g8, bishop b3 check, king f8, rook h8 check, king moves. Actually, we might want to throw in a check. I'm not sure if that's an improvement as well, to throw in a check to stop the queen doing anything or not. We'll just take the rook. This looks strong because we're covering d1 here. And now we've also got bishop a3 check as well, which might be handy. So this pawn would be really dangerous. So in fact, you know, Adams's move avoids all this. He just plays g6. But now that bishop is a bit looser and it's attacked. Rook e4. It's protected again with c5 this time. But alas, you know, there's no pressure on a7 apart from, you know, the queen and rook now having to get involved. And we see now rook a6. Rook a6 just targeting g6 now. So preparing to let the a7 pawn go to get g6. So rook takes a7. Rook takes g6. Now threatens rook h8. That's pretty dangerous. So trying to get a shield around the king with bishop g7. So now if rook h4, maybe, you know, maybe that's not immediately losing. But white in this position continues another ferocious tactical idea, which, yeah, what would you play here with white if I gave you 20 seconds starting from now? So in this position, white to play. I'm actually, there might be more than, there might be a few ways of winning this, but in the game there was quite an interesting move as well. Okay, so bishop b2 to try and you know, if bishop takes, then we've still got this vicious check here. Okay, and we, you know, the queen would be forced to go in front, and that doesn't look too appetizing. Or might, is that even stronger? I don't know, it might even be stronger. But this was responded to with queen b5. So now the rook is protecting the bishop. But now Svidler just plays bishop c3. and that just keeps a lot of the threats going. And what does actually black play in this position without losing? He's in a kind of very, very difficult scenario. He actually resigns here. Black actually resigned here. If we play, I don't know what we can actually try in this position. It's difficult to actually suggest anything. If rook b7, I think, what would you play in this position? Maybe just check. I mean, maybe just check will do. Just to go like this. This is a lot of material to win this bishop by force. There seems to be a lot of material there. Rook and 2 bishops will be really good, or there might even be stronger. So anyway, it was, I don't know, that was an insane game to choose actually. I just thought I'd show you it because it was very dynamic. So anyway, so let's have a look at another game. Right, so Gavriel against Petrosian. So another crazy game from Zvidla in the past. If I can load it properly. Okay. Okay, so this game was in the World Cup of 2011. So Gavriel playing white. I'm going to flip the board. So Zvidla playing black, and we get another Roy Lopez. So a6, bishop a4, knight f6. Okay, b5, standard stuff. Bishop c5, a4, rook b8. So Zvidla's taking on this system with black. 8 takes, c3, d6. It looks fairly standard so far. Bishop e3, black castles, knight bd2, h6, h3, rook e8, queen c2, safeguarding e4 for a moment against the EDs. And that's taken anyway. C takes, knight a5, bishop goes to a2, bishop b7, putting pressure, lots of pressure on e4 it seems. Okay, but white now plays e5, and this looks as though, hang on a sec, this is pretty crude stuff. Against h7, would you have really done this as black? If you were being careful here, would you have just played bishop b7? Because isn't white sneakily trying to play for a crude, mating on h7? That's the naughtiness about this. So we see e5. Zvidla just plays knight d5, and it looks as though, hold on a sec, surely he can't do this. Bishop b1. What does black actually do now about h7? And this is one of the incredible things about this game. The mysterious things. If this was an amazing pawn sacrifice. So black played g6, just offering h6. Now if white doesn't take on h6, then black still has a lot of pressure on the center in this position. These bishops look potentially quite good across the center, and maybe even knight c4 might be considered at some point. So white plays bishop takes h6, and black just calmly puts more pressure on the center with knight c6. Okay, so e takes d6, queen takes d6. Is this center a meltdown here? Look, there's a lot of pressure with this rook on e3. The bishop can't even return back now. So it's quite committal that d4 is under so much pressure here. But we see knight e4. And it looks quite dangerous, for f6. But the knight's holding f6 at the moment. Queen b4. So again, d4 is under great scrutiny here. We see bishop a2, and finally, d4 is taken, and it's attacking the queen. So, but there's another little cheapo trick here. White plays knight f6 check. Well, cheapo check, a resource. Knight f6. Now, what would you play here with white? if I give you 20 seconds starting from now. So black to play, what would you play if you were playing black? So I'm either give you 200 points or minus 200 points, depending on your answer. Anyone? Anyone else? Any ideas? What would you play black? Actually, there aren't too many moves here. Maybe this is a bad quiz. Or maybe it's a good quiz. I don't know. But if you played knight takes f6, then that runs into something horrible. Queen takes g6, and you're being mated the next move because of this pin. This is an imaginary pawn here. It's pinned. It's not good. So king h8 is played. Okay, now knight takes d4. And now we see knight takes f6. And look at these bishops. They're wonderful going across the centre like this. Whoa. So wonderful bishops here. So is this an amazing pawn sacrifice? We see white playing in this position knight c6, which looks quite dangerous. Okay. Does it need to be taken? Well, no. In fact, here is where things, well, not necessarily. Interesting. If you take it, you could still be in trouble. So what would you play in this position? Because also, if you observe this position, it looks as though f7 and black's looking to be dismantled here. If you lose f7, then g6 is loose. So I don't know. What would you play in this position if I give you 20 seconds, starting from now? Anyone? Any ideas? It's a difficult one. Okay. And now if you chose bishop takes c6, I'm not sure this is that good because queen takes c6. We're actually on the knight, and this bishop was beautiful on that diagonal. It's gone, and also we're still on this pawn here, so this looks unpleasant actually. For what does black actually do here without being dismantled? I think it'll be quite tricky. If we protect the knight, the bishop takes f7, and it's all going a bit terrible. So actually, Peter Zvidler played Queen h4. Well done for those. Queen h4. So it's offering the rook, which is taken. Now, on the bright side of this, if we did an evaluation of this position, forget the material for a moment, just from an evaluation point of view, we can sense actually these bishops are pretty impressive. And it's f2 looks like a soft spot. As well, and it looks as though almost, in fact, that in this position there looks to be almost a killer tactic which wasn't played in the game. No, queen g3 though is refutable, although we're threatening mate. Just knight c6. And we're not threatening mate anymore, so that's not the idea. Okay, the idea was actually rook e2, and now we're double attacking on f2 and the queen. So we've got now 1, 2, 3 pieces on f2. What does white play in this position? Well, he tried queen c3, so he's on the knight on f6. But now rook takes f2, and not only we've got two things protecting anyway, so we've got these nasty ideas now on g2. Look at these beautiful bishops. what does white actually play in this position? G2 is under fire. He's going to get mated if he takes that rook. He'll just get mated on G2. So he just tried to defend G2. He just played knight C6, blocking the bishop from G2. But now black to play just plays rook, takes F1, double check. And, you know, the queen is protecting here, so that's not a problem. You know, so if king H2... Actually, it's not knight G4, that's pinned, unfortunately, otherwise that would be mate. But I think we might just take... I suspect we might just be able to take here. And that will be very good for black. Now, if king takes F1, then we just play queen F2 mate. Now, there's a question here. Could he just take on E2? So, in the game, so I just want to show you the game though. So I think in the game, actually... No, this was the game continuation, taking here and then white resigned, it seemed. But if we go back earlier, so rook E2, was there any chance for white to do anything different? So if he took on E2... I think this is where that tactic is concerned, isn't it? Queen G3. Let's have a look at this again, because the queen is not supporting C6, is it? So what do we do about G2? White to play. Does anyone see any way of salvaging this? For white. I think it's lost, isn't it? I think you have to agree it's lost. I think if, you know, we can temporarily interrupt here, but we just take again. That doesn't help. There's no check here, we just take here. There's no check. What do we do? Wow. So this was a crushing move, actually. If we just rewind this, knight c6, inviting this dangerous fork, queen h4, and it's looking at f2, but it's also looking at g3 once the knight moves. Wow. So knight takes b8. We just want queen g3 to work. So we see queen g3 does knight c6. So we see rook e2 distracting the queen away from c6. So we see queen c3, but then we see rook takes f2. End of game. Wow. What amazing tactical abilities these grandmasters have that are playing in the Russian Championship. So Peter Vidler, it started with that dynamic pawn sacrifice, but what he seemed to bring out in this game of great beauty was these bishops. You know, these bishops over here, just sacking a pawn on the king side. He's seemingly, you know, setting up very crude, white's setting up very crude diagonals against h7. But black just sacrificed this pawn, strangely, and white's d4 is just collapsing here. d4 is in big trouble, or e5, one of the two. You can't protect both d4 and e5. So even after knight e4, queen b4, that looks an amazing way to get to the king in retrospect. Like this. So knight takes d4, clearing the way for this queen to come to h4. Pyrotechnical stuff, and then finally f2, and these bishops are just shooting at white's king. It's quite incredible, really. So rook e2, a crushing blow, rook e2. Amazing. So let's have a look at another game. Okay, so this was played on Korchnой's birthday, Kramnik against Kasparov. So Kramnik is another player, of course, playing in the Russian final. So I thought I'd just find their notable games from the past, just out of interest. So this is a notable game I haven't covered on my YouTube channel. So Kramnik playing white. So Kasparov was 2-8-2-7 at the time of this game. This was in 2001. So Kramnik was 2-7-9-7. Let's have a look. So we'll flip the board. So d4, Kasparov plays knight f6. c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, and Kasparov takes on c4, e3, and now a6, bishop takes c4, b5. It looks quite classical. c5, you know, black's usually trying to put his bishop on this diagonal. a4, b4, knight e4, black protects the knight. Knight takes, white castles, bishop b7, d takes c5, and it looks like a symmetrical pawn structure. Bishop takes c5, but black's pieces look quite active here. Queen e2, although it is eyeing, this battery is eyeing a6. Does the rook really want to leave a6 here? Well, Kasparov plays queen d5, which looks, it's got a really aggressive intention just to switch the queen over here. Then knight g4, and then we're threatening bishop f3 and like queen h2 mate. That looks as though it's the basic plan here. So we see rook d1, queen h5. Okay, so we got this eyeing of f3. h3 stops any knight g4s. That's handy. Rook d8. Now Kramnik plays knight d4, so he's offering the queens to come off. That's avoided. Queen d5 threatening mate. The knight goes back. Okay, now in this position, if Kasparov castles, then that would be a disaster. Bishop takes h7, winning the queen. Whoa. So he doesn't want to do that. He plays actually king e7. And it looks as though black's bishops are actually quite active here, especially in the light of the previous game we've just seen. These look like really dangerous bishops, surely. Okay, now here, does white really want to sit and take this position? Because it looks as though black, Kasparov, has a firm grip over the e4 square. It looks very, very passive, potentially, this position. If we play b3, I don't think that really helps. I think black's got lots of options here, including maybe just knight e4, possibly, just on top off the top of my head, because you know we've got huge pressure on d1. We can't take this because you know we're going to drop d1, aren't we? So what do we do if we play bishop b2? Maybe you know knight c3 here. This doesn't look as though, I don't know, maybe there's stronger. Okay, but b3 wasn't played. Instead, we see Kramnik fighting, trying to create dynamism for his pieces. He plays e4, so the bishop's got this whole diagonal, but he's sacrificing a pawn. Knight takes e4, and now we see bishop e3. So challenging, we had to defend f2, and he's challenging this bishop. So what has he done with this pawn sacrifice? Well, white now is threatening something like bishop takes a6. He's on, potentially on the queen. We see bishop takes e3, queen takes e3, and the queen sidesteps with queen c5. Queen e1. So white's a pawn down, but it's a little bit tricky now for black. He's lost his bishop pair. This knight has to move back. Surely it does move back. And now white seems to be more in the driving seat after rook ac1. Kasparov moves the queen back. It doesn't look as though, it looks as though, is there a problem with the king on e7 in this position? So white's a pawn down, but has he got like dynamic compensation? He plays now knight e5, and it looks as though maybe knight c4 could be annoying because we're on b4 here. There's a check. Knight c4 might be dangerous. We see rook d4, And, you know, possibly one of the ideas, I mean, possibly might be, you know, moving the queen here to be on d3 if knight c4. But Kramnik actually plays bishop takes a6. So this is getting a bit crazy now. What is going on with bishop takes a6? Well, if bishop takes a6 here, we have rook takes d4. And if queen takes d4, we've got knight c6 check. So bishop takes a6, and all of a sudden it's not really that comfortable for black. The tables seem to have turned here. Black seems to be under a little bit of pressure now after this bishop takes a6. So Kasparov tries rook takes d1. And now Kramnik just plays rook takes d1 here. What is going on, you might ask? Well, okay, if the queen leaves b4, then I think we just take on b4. If queen takes a6, queen takes b4 check. Possibly, might be strong here. If king e8, what would you play here with white? Is this convincing? I think there is a crushing move here. If I give you 20 seconds in this position, what would you play in this position? Anyone? Or have I gone wrong with queen takes b4 check? I'm slightly concerned. Any ideas? I think rook d6 might be quite crushing here because we've got lots of ideas coming up after rook d6. Knight c6 is suggested. I'm not sure about knight c6. I think we might just take that. But I think rook d6 is crushing. But this wasn't played anyway. So queen takes a6 wasn't played. We see actually bishop takes a6. So white Kramnik is a piece down here. A piece down. What would you play in this position? So this is the game continuation now we're following. If I give you 20 seconds here, what would you play in this position? Or would you resign? You're playing against Kasparov. Any ideas? Okay, strangely, this seems to be quite good now. After queen takes b4 check. Okay, this has to be taken, otherwise we're losing the queen. Then we get knight c6 check. And one point to note here is if king e8, I think we have rook d8 is mate. So the king is forced back to the awkward f8 square, blocking in the rook. Okay. But at least, you know, if rook d8 now, we've got knight e8. But the point is to take now. I'm sorry, the point is not to take immediately. Actually play rook d8 check to get that pin. Now take on b4 and we're attacking the bishop. If we evaluate this position, we've got two connected passed pawns here and the rook's kind of hemmed in. Kasparov tried bishop e2 in this position. Bishop e2. I think if he tries king e7, it might be plausible to... Okay, let's not get into that, but I just thought it might be plausible to consider knight c6 and b4 check and b4. But no, let's get into the game continuation. Bishop e2. If only this pawn could progress. We see now f3, and now to try and kick the bishop off this diagonal. h5. But the bishop would have c4 here. This is taken away. So b3. No c4, no d3, no b5, no a6. So ready for king f2 to be effective. Rook h6. Kasparov is trying to activate his pieces. King f2. And I think this will just be all over if the bishop, well, if the bishop moves here, we can actually just take it. The bishop's kind of trapped. Whoa. So Kasparov played rook g6, trying to get at least a pawn. So king takes, rook takes g2, king d3. But this looks good now for white. So rook g3, a5, check, king c4, and Kasparov resigned. Now, what I find remarkable about this game is that at some point here, it looked really, really passive for white. This position here, you're playing against Kasparov and it looks incredibly passive, this position. And things started happening after king e7, which looks in theory of vulnerability. But to play this e4, it's amazing. It kind of gave white a lot of energy to get rid of this bishop, which is one of black's most dangerous pieces. And it seemed black started going on the back foot. But it's an incredibly brilliant idea that this knight is going all around the place with these tactics. So this bishop takes a6. Incredible tactics from these, super strong grandmasters. Incredible tactics. What do we play here with black? So rook takes d1, rook takes d1. So bishop takes a6. We saw this incredible idea, a piece down, just queen takes b4. A piece down, and it turns into like a winning position, it seems. Unless anyone's got any questions about it. I don't know if there's any questions about this game. It's another mega complex game. It just seems this a pawn is really, really dangerous. So and the bishop had to be lost. Okay, so yeah, I've got another game of Kramnik against Morozevich here, another brilliant game. Okay, let's have a look at this. Kramnik against Morozevich. So this fantastic game is in 2007. Morozevich was 2758, Kramnik 2811 actually. So knight f3 from Kramnik, knight f6, c4, e6, g3, Catalan territory, d4. Morozevich takes on c4, bishop g2, a6, knight e5, check, knight c3, knight d5, and white just castles here, black castles, queen c2. And it looks as though Morozevich has nicked a pawn from this opening after b5. He's just protected his c4 pawn. Where's the compensation? Interesting. So knight takes d5, e takes. Isn't black just the pawn up? Is this some sort of weird, like, positional gambit? Well, white plays b3 now, and the pressure on the diagonal is felt, because b takes, we've got knight takes c4 coming up to try and use that pin on d5. Morozevich tries c6, so he's trying to block up this diagonal. So he's holding on to his pawn. It seems rather solidly. It looks like a solid formation here, doesn't it? Okay, but now we see e4. And again, questions are being put on this diagonal. Now f6, trying to kick this knight back. And surely black could carry on developing quite naturally if the knight moved back. But what would you play here with white if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Anyone? Interesting. I'm not sure that knight takes c6 would do anything particularly, because knight takes, we've got, you know, d4 here on the queen. I don't think this looks particularly appetizing. But what Kramnik did was actually play e takes d5 here. So he is offering the knight. So f takes e. And again, this is like profound stuff, because you might think, isn't like d takes? That wasn't actually played d takes. No, white actually played b takes here. So for the moment, you know, he's not worried about that because he's got check and he's on the rook. So what does actually Morozevich do in this position? He's just won that knight. Is it ill-gotten gains? Let's kind of get rid of these arrows. Trying to get rid of the arrows, nearly. What on earth is going on here? Okay, black tried e takes d4, and now we see d takes c6. So the threat is c7, surely. c7 to win the rook is pretty dangerous. But there's also something else which is quite horrible about this position. I think that if the rook tries to get out of the way, I think there's a strong move available to white, which is quite crushing here. What would you play if you had this position? Rook a7 wasn't played. So white to play here. It looks as though it gets out of the way on this diagonal, doesn't it? But I think there is a strong move here. I know we're a piece down. I'll give you 20 seconds starting from now. What would you play here? Yes, yes. Actually, it does look as though I'm not sure about bishop f4s. You know, that's giving black an opportunity to maybe counter sacrifice with rook takes f4. I'm not entirely sure that would be desirable. No, actually, I would say, I mean, I haven't checked this with an engine actually, but I would say that c takes b5 is incredibly dangerous here because we're threatening queen b3 check. And if it's not the bishop, then it's getting in b6. You know, if we move the bishop, we get in b6, surely. This looks quite crushing for these pawns. So in the game, we didn't see rook a7. I can only speculate that's probably the reason that CB is strong. We see actually bishop e6 from Morozevich. And then we see c takes b. So at least the bishop is covering the b3 square. But white is now threatening c7. Surely the queen is supporting c7. We see d3 attacking the queen, and that's ignored. c7 is played in any case. So when we queen, after you know, we've always got the rook at the end of this. So black counterattacks with queen d4 attacking this rook. What on earth is going on here? Yes, I've managed to arrange the most crazy set of games that I've ever broadcast. I'm putting them all together on one evening. I don't know, it was a very, very bad idea. I just thought it would be quite amusing to have a look at these games in sequence. Okay, but what is going on here? What does white play? Okay, the knight's attacked, the rook's attacked, the queen is attacking the rook, the queen is attacked. What do you want to play in this position with white? So white's play, if I gave you 20 seconds, what would you speculate is a good move? And let's have a look what happens. Okay, the queen's attacked. We want to leave the threats on black. So Kramnik plays Queen A4. Okay, so he's offering a rook now. He's already sacrificed a piece before. Not Queen C6, knight's on C6, isn't it? So okay, so Knight D7 was played. Why didn't he want to take the rook? He didn't want to take the rook. Maybe because of Queen takes here, and it looks as though, you know, there's still lots of horrible things going on here. So he didn't take the rook. He played Knight D7, and now Bishop E3 protects. Of course, the rooks are protecting each other. Queen D6, and now Kramnik finally takes on A8. Rook takes A8. Bishop F4. Okay, the queen is protecting b4 here. It steps back, still protecting b4. But now our old pawns are back. b6 is played. And this is quite a painful threat, b7. And the other problem with this position for black now, it all of a sudden seems to have quite a few loose pieces on knight takes b6. If knight take, which wasn't played, knight takes b6, queen c6, I think. And you know, we're attacking, we're getting material back, probably with advantage, one would assume, because this pawn is so dangerous. So this wasn't played, so we've got these menacing pawns now. Okay, so black tries knight e5. Are these squares around the king? You know, these hunters are trying to mate white on the light squares now. Kramnik takes on e5 anyway. Queen f3 now threatening nasties like this. Just a very, very calm move. Queen d1, evicting the queen. Queen e4. And now we see b7 being played. b7. Now if queen takes b7, white's just the exchange up, surely. This looks unpleasant. All of a sudden white's the exchange up with a big pawn on c7, and he's threatening actually queen d8 check. So I think this is getting a bit desperate. Morozevich tries rook f8. We see c8 queen, bishop d5 threatening mate, just f3, and here Morozevich resigned. So I don't know, it's just a crazy game. I just wanted to show you this crazy game. If we have a look at what Kramnik did, I don't know, he's some sort of weird genius. So this pawn sack from the opening, it looks as though, you know, was he going to move the knight? He had no intention of moving the knight. So we've got potential issues on this diagonal and this loose bishop here being brought up with this knight sacrifice, strangely, in this position. It's not as easy, you know, because we've got two loose pieces and the king on this like loose diagonal. Is that really worth a piece here? So after e takes d4, d takes c6. We've got a lot of threats going on. So bishop e6, yeah, it needs to be like investigated in some detail. C takes b5. So threatening now c7. We see d3, c7 anyway. Well, here, you know, if we just take and take like a8. So queen d4, queen a4. I mean, these pawns, I mean, we know Kramnik's good with passed pawns, but this is very imaginative that these pawns are so dangerous here. You know, he gets on top of this position here after taking on a8, and he gets on top with this b6. These two connected passed pawns are really, really strong. I think there's another saying in chess about, you know, connected passed pawns, you know, worth their like weight in gold. And here, you know, it's like winning material. If knight takes b6, we've got queen c6. So incredible. Morozevich tries his best to get onto the light squares, but queen d1 is just, you know, it's just leading to a winning position here. There's always this f3. It's a bit annoying. f3 is just winning. Okay, so yeah. Have I got any other crazy games? There's one or two. There's a game from Vitigov. Does anyone want? I don't know. Has it been an hour? Does anyone want one more game? Should we go over one more, or should we just next week? Does anyone want one more game, or next week? I could find a short one, relatively short one to end with. Okay, just one more. Okay, just one more. Vitigov. So this is another guy playing in the Russian Super Championships, but this is a game from the past. Vitigov, Nikita Vitigov. He's playing against Ding Liren in Russia versus China, St. Petersburg, 2012. So it was 2703, and Ding Liren, one of the top Chinese players, 2680. So we'll make this the last game, I think. So d4, knight f6, c4, g6. So it's a king's engine, and it turns into a Simish variation. After castles, bishop e3, so Simish c5, knight ge2, and Ding Liren plays b6. Okay, so he's holding his centre together. d5, e6. Now white tries to control that d5 square with knight f4. He wants to keep a piece eyeing d5. So e takes d5, knight f takes d5, knight c6, queen d2, black takes on d5, and the knight replaces the other knight. Knight takes d5, bishop e3, sorry, bishop e6 rather, bishop d3, and black seems to have good dark square control here. You know, classically in this system with all these pawns on light squares, you think these dark squares are pretty juicy. Black takes on d5, c takes, and just puts the knight on d4. It looks as though black's done quite well so far. White castles, b5, king h1, queen d7, rook a e1, and then we see b4 from black, f4. Okay, is black faced though with any issue of f5 coming up, or is it, you know, e5 square is going to be too strong? Now this is an interesting thing happening here. Ding Liren plays h5. Funny enough, as if he doesn't mind this move f5. Maybe, you know, he shouldn't have played that. Possibly a bad idea. I don't know what you would play here with black. Would you be considering f5, or would you not care because you're going to get the e5 square? Is that too dangerous because of f6? I don't know. How many of you would play h5 here? If I gave you 20 seconds to have a look at this with black, let's just flip the board. How would you defend this? And this looks a little bit dangerous. What would you play here if I gave you 20 seconds, starting from now? What would you play? Anyone? Any ideas? I'll flip the board again. Okay, it looks a little bit odd though that h5 was played. Maybe you might consider this a little bit odd. So f5 was played anyway, not caring about this e5 square. So in chess, you know, there's double-edged swords. If you play like this, you're weakening e5. What can you do? But to get something, you give something up. So he's given up the e5 square, and the bishop perches itself on e5. Okay, now white takes on d4, and black plays actually bishop takes d4. Possibly, you know, he would have considered surely c takes d4. If c takes d4, then isn't f6 actually really quite dangerous? You know, we're threatening queen h6 here. But you might think, well, you know, king h7 is still quite dangerous, surely. But black played bishop takes d4. Which this might not be the best defense. So white to play, this is a really vicious continuation. But I believe everyone should be aware of this combination here. I think it's quite instructive. Now, the reason I believe everyone should be aware of this is because it's like an ideal to get a pawn on f6 and the queen on h6, right? It's a basic ideal thing to mate on g7. So if we're close to that area of mating on g7, we want to know how to get there. Okay, so how do we get there? Well, this bishop is covering f6 potentially, making it undesirable in this position. In fact, white played e5. He wants to wipe out this bishop first. So bishop takes e5. And it's incredible now. Because, you know, we've also liberated this bishop on this diagonal. So we take away the bishop, rook takes e5, d takes, and it looks as though f6. But surely, okay, there's queen h6 coming. Can black not just defend with king h7? And this is the key moment, a winning move here. What would you play in this position? I'm going to give you either 200 points or minus 200 points, depending on what you say here. I know that's pretty cruel. Actually, I'm not really sure one of the moves does anything, coming to think about it. I think there was a point of playing h5 as this queen g4 resource, coming to think about it. Okay, so white to play. If I give you 20 seconds here, what would you play with white? Okay. Okay. Let's have a look at this. You see, if white had played queen g5, then two defences come into mind. Actually, queen g4 seems to justify, you know, it protects h5 against this pin. And it looks as though, where is white's attack here? In fact, I can't see white's attack. Can you? I'm not sure white has an attack. But even if queen g4 didn't exist, sometimes there's rook h8 as a resource. Because again, you know, we play this and then so what? So the incredible thing about this game is that this one pyrotechnical kind of move smashes black up. It eliminates all defensive resources quite brutally. Can anyone on PlayChess see it? Someone's mentioned it on stream. So there's a resource here for white which ends black. Queen g5, we just play queen g4. We just play queen g4. What would you play here? UMAC, what would you play there? What? Tell me. There's nothing. Bishop g6, someone's... Sorry, whoops. Look. Okay, just to examine that again. Bishop g6, right? We just take here. There's nothing. There's nothing. No, white played this. Behold the power of rook f5. This is incredibly powerful. Not only it destroys queen g4 as defense, it also destroys rook h8 as defense. Because if rook h8, we play check. We play check. We get onto h6 and we mate on g7. Touchdown. Rook f5 is crushing against rook h8. It's a really brutal move. What does black actually do in this position? If g takes, you know, we just play queen g5. You know, we're going to mate like this. What do? If queen takes, we just take that. And, you know, we're going to be mating if that's taken. Again, we're threatening, you know, g7 here. Rook f5. I thought that was quite interesting. This basic idea, the primitive idea, how it's supported with rook f5. But you know, earlier I thought it was quite amazing. But maybe black should have played c takes d4. Possibly c takes d4. I don't know. White still seems to have a dangerous attack. But you know, at least the bishop is preserved here. On f6, you know, maybe king h7. Is the rook f5 so dangerous in this position? Maybe, you know, maybe it's quite dangerous. Rook f5 is still playable here, possibly. I don't know. Maybe it's not entirely mating, because the thing is, this bishop hasn't got the scope. It's not pinning anything. There's no paralysed pawn on g6 here, so it's not only the bishop still on the board. This one is not so amazing. I don't know if there's a forced win here in this position. Okay, but in the game it was a disaster because the bishop takes d4, so e5. You see, e5 not only got rid of this guy, you know, this guy is good. So that makes it all work. It makes it all fantastic. So that was in 2012. Okay, and I think I'm nearly out of games. I just had another 2 in reserve at absolute maximum. But I think that's enough, isn't it? Yeah. Or, okay, I think that's enough. So hope you enjoyed this week. Thanks for coming. Thanks very much. So hope you got something from it. So see you next week, and hopefully I can sort out the technical issues quicker. Okay, so this will go on YouTube. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.